Alright, so welcome to part 2 of our Tkinter project 1 in our Tkinter project series. So in here, basically what we're going to do is create the backend for our login page, which we made in the last video. So let me just run this and show you the current output. We have this login page here. We can enter anything, a username and a password, and we can submit that, which currently just prints it out on screen. And we can also use clear to empty these entry fields. Okay, so what is missing here? What are we really going to be working on in this video? Well, currently, we don't have an authentication system. Basically, the username and password that the user enters, how do we know that this is actually a correct username and password? Does it really match with any of the usernames and passwords that have been defined somewhere? Like, for example, you have a database for like 10 usernames and passwords, and someone enters a username and password. What you want to do is actually compare that input with the list of usernames and passwords you already have and see if it matches them. If it does, then you'll be okay. This person has entered the correct username and password and he's verified. But if it's not a match, obviously, then you'll simply return a message saying the username and password you entered was incorrect, right? That's pretty simple, and I think we all use login pages every day in our lives. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just modify this retrieve function. This is where we'll be working, okay? I just want to change the name to something that makes more sense, verify, okay? And I'll change it over here as well, verify. And we don't want to print it out anymore, okay? Instead, we want to actually verify what's being entered, okay? So the first step, of course, is to actually retrieve the username and password inputs from the entry fields, right? So let's put the username in here in a variable called user, and over here we'll put the password in a variable called password, okay? We now have the username and password in here. Now, before we go any further, what I'm going to do is open up a new text file over here, okay? This is the same folder as our project, okay, project 1. I'm going to call this accounts. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to begin entering some names and passwords. Now, for this, I'm going to use a format. Basically, when you're storing data in a file, you need to have some kind of format in mind. You need to sort of know how you wrote data into it. You need to know how you wrote it into it so that when you retrieve it, you can retrieve it following that pattern. Basically, the pattern that I'm going to be using is called CSV, comma separated values. So basically, I'm going to be separating the username and password by a comma. So basically, when I'm reading this data, what I'm going to do is split this around the comma and then read the values. I'm going to read the entire line, then I'm going to split it around the comma, and then I'll have the username and password. So this is what the CSV format is. It's actually pretty popular, and it's easy to use. So I actually really recommend this one. If you don't get this right now, you'll understand more as we actually begin reading data from this file. But let's just go ahead and enter one or two more usernames and passwords. Okay, John Hubbard, and password can be 000. And let's enter one last one, Bob. Okay, and let's just keep it short. Okay, and let's just keep things simple and not leave any gaps between the commas, okay? That might cause issues later on. So let's just do 999 for this one, okay? Great. So we have 3 usernames and passwords here, and we'll be using these to log in, okay? And if the username and password that the user enters matches any one of these perfectly, then he'll be verified. Otherwise, we'll return an error, okay? So let's just minimize that for now and get back to our Python code. Great. Now, what I want to do here is add in some file handling, okay? So this is going to be pretty simple. So even if you don't know any file handling, this should be really easy. So I'm going to first create file, and then I'll write open accounts.txt. So basically what this is saying, this is really self-explanatory, it's saying open the accounts.txt file. Okay, and I don't need to specify the full path or anything. because it's in the same directory as our project file. Okay, so that way we just need to write the file name. Okay, and over here the second parameter is the read mode. Okay, so there are two main modes really, R and W. W is for write and R is for read. So what are we doing here? We're reading data. So I'm just gonna do R. Okay, let's just move a little bit down there. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do here is basically read data from this file. Very easy way of doing this is creating a for loop. So you can do like for line in file. This will automatically iterate over every line in the file. And just to show you, I'm gonna do this. Let's actually run this code and just print submit. And here basically you can see that all the data was printed out line by line. Now one thing I want you to notice here is that there's a gap, one line gap between this data. Why is that? Well, let me tell you why. It's because when we entered the data, I pressed enter to go to the next line, right? Or if you were writing this data directly, you would basically add a new line character after each line, right? Because you want it to move to the next line. So one slight problem here is actually that when you actually read this data, because of that new line, you end up with some extra space over there. It creates an empty line. So for this, basically, I'm going to do this. Watch. Strip. Okay. And I'm going to do... Now, hopefully I did that correct. Let's just see. Great. Yeah, I did that, right. All right. So basically what this does over here, the strip function, is that it removes the new line character from the end of the line. So basically, if you ever run into any issue with extra lines popping up or something, you can just use this format to basically remove all of that, okay? Now let's do one more thing. I'm going to add another dot over here, okay? And I'm going to write split, the split function. And I'm going to write, okay, this basically takes a delimiter as the parameter. Now what is a delimiter? If you haven't heard of this before, basically it sort of specifies what to break it around. Right now we're using comma as separators, right? Comma separated values. So the delimiter is going to be the comma, around which we're going to split the string. Now let's just print this out and I'll show you how this works. And this by the way, will return a string, a list of strings. Watch. You see that? Now we basically have a list of 2 strings. And if I want to access this one, what I can do here is, just watch. I'm going to store this in a variable called temp. Then I'll write print temp 0, okay? This will give me the username. And then I'll write print temp 1. This will give me the password, okay? Now I'm going to submit, and there you go. We got them individually. The username, password, username, password, username, password. All right, pretty good, huh? So let's just remove that for now. And, okay, so this is where the validation part comes in. For this, I'm going to create a flag. There are many ways of doing this, but this is just how I'm going to do it. I'm going to create a flag and put it to is equal to 0. And here I'm going to make a condition. If user is equal to temp 0 and password is equal to temp 1, then what I want you to do is, okay, and by the way, you don't need these brackets. I'm just used to C++ a bit. Okay, so basically what I want you to do here is set the flag is equal to, or actually you can avoid the flags. Let me show you an alternate way. Okay, basically what I want you to do here is print your login credentials have been verified, okay? And I want you to just return as 1. And basically we'll use 1 as successful, okay? 0 as unsuccessful, 1 as successful, okay? If you just, it's just good to keep that sort of thing in mind. Okay, and basically, if the username and passwords match, it'll just stop right here. Okay, it'll return and the program will end. But if this condition didn't trigger, then basically what we're going to do is move to this condition instead, automatically. Your invalid input. How's that? No, actually, we'll do something which we actually see a lot more common. Incorrect username or password, right? We see this very often whenever we're logging in anywhere and we type in something wrong. Okay? Now, I just hope you really got this, because over here, basically what I'm saying is that if this condition here, this print statement over here, will only trigger if this condition never came true. Because if it did come true, this print statement would activate and the whole thing would return, right? So I just hope you're not confused by that, okay? And again, you can use the flag format if you want to. Basically, how the flag format works is that you just remove this, and then you write flag is equal to 1, okay? And then over here, you can be like, if flag was 1, do this. If flag was 0, do that, okay? Again, totally up to you and how you want to do it. Remember that there are like 10 ways of doing anything in programming. Okay, so let's run this, and I'm going to enter something random at first. How about something like Laura? Okay, and 1, 2, 3 as the password. Okay, so I'm going to click submit, and it says incorrect username or password because this doesn't exist. So let's try this differently. Now, code is legacy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Submit, and look at that. Your login credentials have been verified. Now let's try something different. I'm just going to change the password, okay, to something like 000, and I'll click submit. So let's see if it works with just the correct username, but an incorrect password. No, yep, it still works, because our conditions over here state that both of them must be equal. So this is a pretty good, validation system we have right here. Okay, so that's actually the main part of what we wanted to do. There's just one more thing I want to take a look at, and which is something just extra, but it's pretty nice. Okay, so I'm gonna write from Tkinter import message box. Okay, all right. So I'm just gonna remove this over here and instead write prompt is equal to message box dot show error. Okay, and show error, by the way, is one of many functions available in MessageBox, the MessageBox library. So I'm going to link you a link in the description below. So I advise you to go check that out if you want to learn about the other types. Okay, there are at least 6 to 7 different types. Okay, and title will be error. Okay, and the message will be incorrect login details. Okay. Now I'm going to run this and we'll see, let's just type something over here that will give us an incorrect result. So something like Rob and some random password over there. I'll click submit now and watch this. See, we ended up with this nice little box over here, this message box. And this is pretty nice, okay? You see this in a lot of places. So this is just an extra way of actually enhancing your login window. And you can do the same for this as well, but I think that gets kind of annoying if you actually got a prompt every time you entered the correct password and username, so I think I would leave that out. So yeah, we're actually done over here, and I really hope you guys follow up in the next video as well, where we have a whole registration form. Okay, it's going to be similar to the login page, but basically much larger, and there'll be a lot more widgets, all right? And layout will be heavily focused, all right? So basically pay attention to that, because we'll be using pack over there, and we'll be using it properly. Because unfortunately, pack is something a bit difficult to use, and people just take the easy way out and use grid. They don't really teach people how to use pack. So in the next video, I'm actually going to teach you that. I'm going to teach you how to use pack properly and take advantage of its features. Okay, so make sure you follow up over there, and make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss anything, because there'll be a lot more Tkinter content coming out. And if there's anything in particular that you want to suggest, or any ideas that you may have, or any requests, you can leave them down in the comment section below. So yeah, see you in a later video.